Hi, and welcome to Untethered with Jenless, the podcast that's here to help you break free, be you, and unleash your inner brilliance. I'm your host, Jen, and in this episode, we're going to talk about how to reconnect with yourself and create a life you love. Let's dive in. Hey there, unicorn. It's Jen. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm excited about today's special guest, Anna Morris. Anna helps people to reconnect with themselves and to create lives they love using simple techniques that shift your perspective. So she is a coach and she supports people in really achieving the life that they desire. We talk in this episode a lot about the tools and techniques, super simple things that we can do in order to make that happen for ourselves. So Anna and I met at a retreat. It was an amazing experience that we were having together. We're hanging out on the beach and she looks at me and she's like, we need to talk about the breath work that you offered in this retreat, because at this retreat, I had stood up and supported the group in offering a breathwork session. And we got into this big conversation about the techniques that she does, the Kundalini yoga that she has learned, and the things that she offers to her clients in order to shift their perspectives. And so we had just such a fun conversation, kind of comparing and contrasting what it is that we do, what it is that we believe. And there's so many similarities and also some really fun differences. So we talk quite a bit about her journaling process and other ways that she helps people to shift their perspective. So I know 100% there is something for everyone to take away from this conversation. So everyone, without further ado, I welcome to the podcast, Anna Morris. Hi, Anna.
So I love when I first saw you at Kathy Heller's retreat. That's where we met in very posh Boca Raton, which I should tell you, when I heard about Kathy having a retreat, I was like, yeah, I want to go. And then when I heard it was in Boca, I was like, absolutely not. Have no interest in going to Boca Raton. Like, I'm not 80. Like, I'm not interested in that. But when I looked at the hotel, I was like, I'm probably interested in that. It looks quite fabulous. So glad that I went. And when I saw you, I was like, oh, she's the grown-up lady with blue hair. So my story of, do people know that you have blue hair, or is it purple? I don't even know.
It's like, I don't know what it is right now.
It's lavender.
Silvery,
I don't know.
something.
It probably changes, right?
Yeah.
It changes. Yeah. So my story, because we started about like stories and, let's call them limiting beliefs, whatever. But like my story called, oh, that ship sailed. And I'm so pissed off that I didn't dye my hair like everybody else did in high school and like do all these cool things. Doesn't hold water when I see a grown-up woman with blue hair, because yours was like, or lavender, we'll call it lavender, with lavender hair at a retreat. Oh, and she's also got a business and she's professional and like does all this really cool stuff. So like my whole story about like, I can't do that. I've aged out of that choice. I can't, So when I saw you, I was like, oh, wow. Okay. She's great. This is interesting. I'm listening. And then that you do breath work. I come from the yoga world and I've never known breath work called breath work. I've always known it as Kundalini, which, are you familiar with Kundalini?
I am. Yes.
Okay. For those of you who don't know, Kundalini yoga is like medicine, right? I don't know how else to describe it. It's like magic, but it's very woo. Far more so than breath work, I think.
Yeah. Can you describe it for the audience? Because we haven't had somebody come on and actually talk about Kundalini.
So Kundalini, like rewind, my life was very different than it is now. Like I was in pharmaceutical sales in New York City. Like I was not going to yoga. I was not in this world. If you talk to me about any of the things that we're going to talk about today, I'd be like, those people have way too much time on their hands and they are crazy and I'm going to go work hard. That was pretty much my MO. So like where I am today is night and day from where I was.
Hashtag
because
relatable.
I was, yeah, because I was like just desperate for somebody to tell me what to do to be happy. And then I did all those things and I was deeply unhappy. And I was like, well, I'm kind of screwed now because I have all the things. I have the, the bank account, the job, the boyfriend, the apartment, like all the things. And I'm so crazy unhappy. And I can remember going to a Kundalini yoga class. And this was when I was in like power yoga, the hotter, the better, like way intense, like the freaking opposite of what yoga really should be. And I go to it and I was like, this is crazy. I'm never going to this again. This is a bunch of garbage. I need my workout so that like I can do my life. And it wasn't until I broke this arm, I still have a metal plate in it. You can see the scar there. And then the bone came out right there. So I did like a compound fracture. One night in January in New York, I fell and broke it on black ice. I didn't know it was an ice bank that I was falling into. And so I broke my fall and broke my arm. And I obviously couldn't go to yoga. And a couple months went by and I was really, really, and at that point I'd been doing a lot of personal development and life coaching and whatnot. So I knew that I was in a rut and I did not want medicine. I didn't want medications for it. And I went to my yoga studio and I said, what classes can I take with a broken arm? And they were like, oh, well, we have this Kundalini class. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This garbage again. And I went and I cried through the whole thing. And then I went like every day, maybe twice a day. As many classes as there were, I went to every single class on the schedule. And I believe that that is also what helped heal my arm because I like unlocked energy blocks. And that's really what Kundalini is. It just, we hold so much in our subconscious. And if you are a believer in like Louise Hay, you can heal your life. I'm sure you're familiar with, Louise Hay, and that like the things that we believe will manifest in our body as dis-ease. So whenever I have something happen, I don't get upset about it. I just go to the book and I'm like, yeah, I'm totally angry. That makes sense. Right. And then there's just an affirmation that you can do. And I'm making it sound a bit trite. It's far more complex, I'm sure, than that. But it is quite simple. And that's really what Kundalini is that it's simple breath techniques and mantras. And I love mantras, and at the time I was a little averse to them only because I didn't understand them. They're just like, and you'll know this better than I will as a breath worker, because they have no meaning to me, it can help me to like release blocks that I have. And I don't even know what's happening. But I would say if I could choose one yoga for the rest of my life, if I had to pick one type of yoga, it would always be Kundalini. And so when I met you in Florida and you were like, oh, I'm a breath worker, I'm like, oh, that's like a light version of Kundalini, like without the weird stuff, with less of the weird stuff, I should say, because it's still kind of, it can get weird, which I'm into.
It's very similar. The breath work that I personally, so there's so many different kinds of breath work, and we don't need to fully dive into that today. But the kind that I teach is very Kundalini-like, and sometimes we definitely do the weird stuff. And then other times
I
when you're in a
when
group,
you taught it.
you don't do quite as much of that when you're in. We had like 50 or 60 people in that room, so you have to be careful. And in fact, we took that session quite far because everyone was willing to go really far because we had all just had hypnosis. There was so much released.
So great, right? There was so great. But then the thing is, then the ripple effect is like you do it and you don't even know. And then you come out of the retreat and you're like, oh, I don't know that really did anything except for like the next week or the next, right? Like it's all of that. Like you shared the story about your dad. It's like people don't even know that the impact that it has in all parts of their life. Like I always say, people are like, oh, like, I don't know that I need a life coach, but like my husband does. And I'm like, or my kids do, or whatever, my boss does. And I'm like, but see, if you internally shift, everything, or your energetic field around you will shift. So it's like that. You did that one thing. And like, I can't even imagine what it opened up for the 60 people in there. And then all the people, right? That butterfly effect.
The ripple effect of that individual work that we do on ourselves. Can you dive deeper into that for the listener who might be hearing that and being like, wait a second, when I do the work on myself, it influences others? Could you maybe kind of describe what that means from your perspective?
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's the only thing that I coach, because let's face it, like the thing that we all have is free will. So you can never, like I was just on a call with a client and she was like, well, when you said that you tricked your husband, I was like, whoa. I didn't say that. That's how you heard it, because you're in a world of you have to trick people to do what you want or manipulate them. I said I shifted it. So that's going down another rabbit hole, right? The way that you are shapes everything around you, which is really good news and really bad news if you don't like what you see around you. So I'll give you an example. When I started doing all of this work, because I did reference like being in New York and having a very different life, everything kind of shifted for me around 2008, March 2008. Nothing in particular happened, just like deep, deep unhappiness. And I just was finally like willing to try new things. And when I heard this concept that like you are the source of everything that you see in your life, I was like, well, I have a lot of like really gossipy friends who like don't really want to, like don't commit to things. So I lived in New York and I would be like, hey, do you want to make plans for dinner on Friday, or, you know, go do this on Saturday? And you're like, yeah, like let's play it by ear. And I was like, okay, well, but like we would need a dinner reservation and like all the things that would then need to happen to like make that happen. And what I realized is that they were waiting for maybe a better offer. And the bad news about that is that I was doing the same thing. Good news, bad news, right? So I was like, oh, wow. And I'm spending a lot of my time gossiping about other people. So what I saw out in my current friendship field, I was like, whoa, I don't like this. And also I'm doing it too. So that's the good news, bad news part, right? Is that by me saying, you know, I don't actually want to talk about those other people. I'd really love to hear about what's going on in your life and what's happening with your job and da 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 da, was good because it started feeling better for me. It didn't always feel better for other people, right? So then there's like the clean out the closet part of like when you start to shift, the people around you might not like that. That can happen. And I was, you know, I'm always kind of coaching people through that. Like my husband and I also have a design build company where we renovate like condemned houses. They're really, really rough. And so I use that reference of a home a lot. Like when you go to renovate a house, it doesn't look good before. I mean, it looks horrible before it looks good. And so that's the part that I think that like can be the resistance in people wanting to do work on themselves or hire a life coach or do breath work or go to yoga, is that like you will actually have to look at your part in your life that you don't like. And we make it like moral. We make it like a judgment. And it's just really human. And if we can normalize, like, I'm just really like, this is what I knew to do. And now I've learned something different and I can choose differently. We take the morality out of what we've been doing. And I think that that's like a lot of resistance that creeps up, not just, you know, for everybody.
Yeah, that's such a great point about morality. Because judgment has been one of my things. I realized what the impetus for my journey, as many listeners know, was when I realized that judgment was my top skill on the StrengthsFinder skill test. And I was like,
no,
what is
not.
this?
You know,
and I actually realized through a process that that judgment is actually a great thing when applied correctly. And so it sent me down basically the self-development rabbit hole, was this realization. And I started looking in the world around me and lots of gossipy conversations and lots of talking about other people. And that has shifted indeed my relationships. Question for you, because you coach a lot of people on this and you obviously have faced it yourself in your own experience in life with relationship shifting from that moment in 2008. This can be scary for people, letting go of relationships that we have. I mean, this is our current reality and we're really comfortable. Even if we're uncomfortable, we're also comfortable, if that makes sense. So how do we let go?
It's familiar. It's just familiar. And that's where I love this word. It's just my favorite word in the whole world right now. And I think always is like curious. If you can just let yourself be curious, it takes away all the drama, because we're really addicted to drama too. Let's face it. Right. Like, you know, like my husband said yesterday, I was, you know, about to finish up. I teach 12-week coaching programs, and my son went back to school and I completed the 12 weeks last night. So like, I was just a total mess, right? Like crying over nothing. He was like, what's this really about? I was like, don't you know, it's not about the dishes. Like, it's, you know, it's, and he was like, go just take a break and just like scroll on your phone. I was like, what are you, crazy? That's like the worst thing I could do. So instead I meditated, right? Because I'm not a dummy. Like I know that like me scrolling on my phone is not going to bring me any good stuff because that's the drama and the comparison trick. And I think that if we let ourselves get curious about like, well, okay, so I'm seeing all this stuff around me that I don't like. I wonder how that happened. It can just like relax your nervous system because it's like you're just kind of going on, I don't like to use the word scavenger hunt, but like treasure hunt, a treasure hunt of like, how did I get to be this way? And so then you can relax around it. And you're like, oh, yeah, with the gossiping, my grandmother would have happy hour every day at 4:30 at her house, gin and tonics for anybody that knew her and was friends with her. And so that was the thing that we would do. And mostly what would happen is that they would talk about neighbors. Nothing wrong with that. It's just the way that everybody connected. And so when you don't want to participate in that anymore, it can be really hard because you're like, okay, well, now how do we connect? You have to find new ways to connect. And also, there's a quick thing to check is that we're not judging other people for doing the behavior that we've recognized, like, I don't actually want to do anymore, but doesn't actually feel good. And other people might not be on that journey. And that's not for us to decide because at the end of the day, we all have free will.
And so, yeah, so does the other person in the relationship. You have free will as well as they have free will. For myself, that's been one of it was such a challenging realization and to let go because, and I don't know if you experience this, I'll just share it, is that I realized that I needed them to feel okay with everything, like the other person in any given situation. I needed the other person to feel okay so that I could feel okay. Like I was only going to feel okay if they felt okay. And so I don't know if you see this with your clients, but I'm so curious to hear if this has played out in your life or in your clients' life.
That's so much pressure on other people. And that's really what it boils down to. It's like, it's just so much pressure on other people. And the only way that we actually feel okay is with ourselves. Like it's not even possible. It's not even possible. But we really think that it is. And so I had a moment in my own life, and I think that we can all, and we might have shades of this, but like I live now 2 houses down from my mom. Just, for a lot of people, a not good situation. For me, it's great. It wouldn't have always been. And I remember when I got married, my sister telling me this story of like my mom was complaining about me doing something. I don't know. I wasn't in this situation. And my sister yelled at her and she was like, what's she ever going to do that's okay? She's marrying the perfect guy that she met because you are best friends with his dad. He's like the dream son-in-law. He's from here. He checks all of the boxes and she's still not good enough for you. And when my sister told me that story, I just got free because I was like, that is not over here with me. That's over there with my mom. And if we can get that, like, it's not our job to make somebody feel good or to have somebody else make us feel good. Like if we can get that it's my only job is to make myself feel good. That's my only job. It's not, I have 2 kids, not my job to make them feel good. My job is to give them like the container that I think that they will do best in. Right. And that's always getting figured out. But like my job's not to make them happy. Like Jack said to me the other day, like, Mom, you didn't make me happy. I'm like, you're right. It's not my job to. That's your job. So I think if we can like accept that, like, it's really the only thing that we're responsible for is ourselves. Because last I checked, like no one's coming to live your life and no one's coming to live my life. So what am I waiting for then? Permission, acceptance from who? It's always from yourself. That's why I coach journaling, because like that for me was like the thing. I've been doing it 15 years, every day, 3 pages, takes me about 45 minutes. People are like, oh, but like when I'm in this program, I'm like, no, it's not a program. It's what I do every day because it's the way that I handle my own self-judgment. It's the way that I like dump it all on the pages so I don't have to carry it into my day. It's not to say it doesn't show up, but I am able to see like, ooh, man, I would never talk to somebody like that. I would never talk to somebody the way I'm talking to myself. But the way to catch it is when you're being judgmental of other people, it's always worst with yourself. It's like, what is it? One finger at you, three fingers back at yourself.
Thank you for sharing this. I think it's such a powerful shift, and it can be fully recognizing that, particularly in the beginning, this isn't always easy. It's definitely not easy to look at the world around you and say, oh, this is coming from me.
Oh, yeah. The first thing I do when I start a 12-week program, I establish journaling and dates with yourself, but also it's like we clean out the closet and I take them off social media because you're mostly confused or saying, I don't know, or I'm not sure, or what's my little voice, because you're so busy paying attention to other people's business. And it's just not your business. If we paid attention to our home and to our lives and to our body and how we're feeling, a lot of this madness would stop because it's just chaos and we're totally addicted to the chaos.
How do you help people to do that? How do you help them to connect back to themselves?
Well, I've said, as I just said, journaling. And the reason that I coach 12 weeks is because I need people to quit a lot because mostly people quit. Mostly we don't have integrity to ourselves. And so then you let other people not have integrity to you because then you get to let yourself off the hook all the time, right? So it's really just about the work. We have to stop the cycle of morality around things. It's either working or it's not working. If your life is working, then you're not going to be listening to this podcast, or you're not going to be reaching out to work with me or do breath work or whatever. Your life is working. Great. It's when it's not working, when you feel like, I don't know what's wrong, but I don't feel right. That's why journaling helps you to discover what that little voice is actually telling you. Now, the next part of that is once you start hearing the little voice, we mostly don't like what it has to say. Like my little voice told me to move to my hometown. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. My husband was like, you must be effing crazy. We are not doing that. And I was like, but see, I told you that my little voice is never wrong. And you know that it isn't. And we've said we want to live a life in alignment. And I don't want to fight the universe. I want to be in the flow with the universe because it's more fun and easy that way. And it's just more fun that way. Hasn't it always been right when we pay attention to our gut instinct? If you don't recognize what I'm saying with a little voice, it's that gut instinct. People say to me a lot, I just had a client say to me well, I don't know. And I was like, do you not know? Or are you just afraid of what you do know? The question is do you want to be married or not married? She was like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, that's not true. Mm-hmm. But you might not be ready to say the truth yet. But we do always know. And that's why people mostly don't like journaling. Because once you write it down and you see it, it's very hard to unsee it. It's very hard to, it's in black and white in front of your face. I hate my job. I don't want to do this anymore. Now you might have to do something about it. That's where I'm so passionate about journaling over anything else. There are so many great tools. And always for me, it's that intention of putting the truth down on paper that makes me not be able to hide from it anymore. And if it's up here, you can get away with stuff. Even in my journal, I still get away with stuff, but it makes it a little bit harder. I'm turning 44 on Sunday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And I was like, I can just feel something's happening. I don't know, something's happening. And I've known for a while that drinking really doesn't serve me, right? Now, I will say I'm not an alcoholic, but I also know that it's just not really doing anything for me. And so I started looking at well, what does 44 mean, right? What is the double numbers, something about it. And I looked it up and I've been doing some reflection on it. And it's It's all about like putting the foundation in place and setting up like your life to really be the way that you want it to be. There's a lot of like financial abundance. So I was like, okay, so in my 44th year, I'm not going to drink for the year, for the whole year. I don't like this. I don't want to be saying this on your podcast right now because then I might have to be accountable, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm
Except when
writing
I
it down.
journaled, yeah, write it down.
In my journal.
But see, my little voice has said to me many times over the last 20 years, stop drinking. It's not mean. It's not like you've got a problem. Like go to, you know, it's not any of that. It's like, just stop drinking. And then I keep ignoring it and I keep ignoring it. And I'm like, what would be on the other side of me not ignoring it? Let me find out. So again, it's about like going back to curiosity, right? And I'm like, I'm going to stop drinking and I'm going to make $1 million. Okay, that sounds like a fun game because it's all just a game. Like, this is all hilarious. They're like, God, the universe, angels are like, can you? I mean, they must just be having a huge laugh at like how we just make it all so significant when it's like we could just play with it and just like get curious and have fun. And it probably helps that I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So I'm like surrounded by like curiosity and fun and tantrums and all the things all day long.
So true. But talk about, if I put this in context of this podcast, talk about an untethering that you are about to experience, because there's all of these moments that are going to happen over the next year. And I'm not saying this to freak you out. I think you're well aware about what you're embarking on, where it's going to be, you have to make that choice to continuously maintain this promise that you have made to yourself, which is constantly reinforcing the integrity of you to yourself that you are going to maintain. And that's hard. That's not easy.
It is not easy. It's also why I made it a year, because a month, I'm like, I've done a month. I've done 3. I did 9 months. I've had 2 kids. Like like it's fine. It's about, I know this. The more I put integrity in my life, the more workable my life is. It's just, again, take the morality out of it, take the good, better, best, whatever. It's just about my life working and feeling good. And when I have a lot of integrity in my life, and integrity is just that you say one thing and you do the same thing. That's all that it is. I do like daily coaching videos, and I think I shot one about like integrity is not morality. And we're very quick to make it moral. And it's not. It's just workable, right? Like my husband will say like, oh, I'm going to handle dinner on the nights that you coach. And I'll come out of a coaching call and like dinner's not handled. And he's like, well, I was dealing with the kids and da, 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 da. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I get that. I heard all of that. I appreciate that. And you said that you would handle dinner. So I just want to understand, is dinner handled? And he's like, no. And I said, okay, well, all that needs to happen is that like next time we have that agreement, we need to make a plan, because it sounds like there wasn't a plan that was put into place and it doesn't work for me. But I wasn't like, what a shitty husband. Like, I wasn't like any of that. I was like, hey, that just doesn't work. I don't like eating dinner at like 9 or 9:30 because now we have to call in for takeout and like it gets really late and expensive. So like, can we make a different plan next week? What could I do to support you in that? It's all about workability. That's like my favorite thing about looking at this year. I'm like, well, I want to get up at 5 a.m. and like journal and work out and meditate before the kids wake up at 7. Okay, well, how would I do that? I would stop drinking. I would go to bed at 9 o'clock. It's really easy. It's not complicated, but we're so attached to like the drama and the chaos and like, oh, but like, then I can't do this. And I'm like, yeah, but like, I could also have $1 million. That sounds like fun. You just got to put a different carrot at the end of the road.
When we create that drama, even within ourselves, the drama of not being integrous to ourselves, we get addicted. I mean, I will say, even for myself, that like staying up too late, oh, I want to get up early tomorrow and work out, but then I will stay up too late. We all have these little things that we do to ourselves, and it's pulling on those threads. And it's like, wait, that conversation that you had with your husband, we can be having that conversation with ourselves and with so many others. Have you read, I'm just curious, we mentioned Louise Hay's book, and I'll link to that in the show notes. Have you read The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck?
No,
Oh,
I've read
girl.
nothing by Martha Beck. I don't even know how I've gotten through life without that. Like, I
You're just
have
going to
heard
be
her name a
nodding.
million. I'm like, yes, yes. Well, that was like, so I finally read Women, Food, and God after the retreat. Did you remember
I
when
have
Kathy
still not
said,
read it. Thank you for reminding
oh
me. Thank you for
my
reminding me.
God.
Okay, so that's
Mm,
another one. We're
mm,
gonna we're gonna
mm.
link to all
Okay,
these
here, I have
books.
it here. I'm going to grab it. I have both books right here. Where's the other one? So I grabbed it. I started reading and I kid you not, like the whole thing is just highlighted. I'm looking through it. I'm like, all of it. It's all just highlighted. The whole
We've got
thing. The
all
whole
the
thing
book
is
recommendations.
well, it ended up, so it was crazy, and that's really where I think the rubber hits the road with life, is when you put integrity in and when you learn the tools for you. Like for me, it's journaling. Now, I'm not here to say that it's that for everybody. Like for my mom, she's a solid no. She's like, I'm 75. I know I'm not journaling. She goes on a 5-mile walk every morning. That's where she works her stuff out. I personally still think journaling would be valuable, but again, free will. So if we can allow ourselves to like have the tools that we need to listen to our intuition, there's just really nothing to worry about. I know that that may sound like a little trite and like, Pollyanna of me, but Women, Food, and God, I was like, yeah, I kind of filed it away when Kathy did her retreat. And I was like, not going to read that book. I don't have an eating issue. I come from a family of eating disorders, and I'm the only one that doesn't have one. So I was like, all set. I'm good. And then I had an appointment with a functional medicine doctor who was like, I want you to eat whatever you want, whenever you want. I was like, I'm sorry, what did you just say? Because I had been intermittent fasting and doing Whole30 for a year. So I was like, what, as much as I trust myself, it had not extended into my plate. And I was like, okay. So the next day I ordered the book and I locked myself in the bathroom and like cried through the first 25 pages. And I was like, all of this. And then I ended up coaching it to my 12-week coaching group. And it changed everyone's life. I've never, ever, ever coached on food or body stuff. Like it's just one of those things that like, because I wasn't willing to deal with my own stuff, I'm certainly not going to coach on it. Right. Like that. I wouldn't even know how to do that. But that happened right around the same time as Barbie. And I was like, okay, like these are the assignments, like read this book and go watch Barbie. And so I think that that's what's so fun about letting your intuition guide your life, is that there are just surprises everywhere. Like you and I have not been in touch since the retreat. And I like saw something that you posted. I was like, love this. Everything I see from you. I'm just like, yes. So I was like, I'm just going to send her a message. And here we are. It's just not as hard as we make it out to be. But we're so addicted to it being hard that we then make it hard.
When we write these really wild stories around it, and that's where it gets, I think that's part of what you're saying here too, is like we start to write the story around it. And instead, what if you just simply acted every time that you felt the nudge and listen to what it's saying? So thank you so much. This is everything that you've shared is so supportive. You also gave me personally a nudge to go and read that book. And anyone, again, I'm going to link to that in the show notes. And you're not the first person to say what a powerful impact it's had.
And to remind me the Martha Beck book.
The Way of Integrity. The Way of Integrity. So her journey is so, I mean, it's a powerful story. It will have, it like brings you to your knees at some point, just like she has been through the ringer as a human being. And like so many powerful teachers, she has just had that struggle that brought her to where she is. But she had made a commitment to herself, kind of like you with stopping drinking, to not lie for an entire year. And that included lying to herself. He doesn't suggest it. She's like, maybe take this in smaller sips. And that's the way that she takes you through in the book. She's like, if you want to really upend everything in your life, sure, go ahead and do this, but it's not going to be fun.
That's pretty much what I did when I think about what like my complete upheaval. is that I remember I did like a 3-day group coaching class, and I was like, oh wow, my high school boyfriend cheated on me. And I was about 30 at the time. And I was like, oh, and so I can see now I cheated on every single boyfriend that I'd ever had since then. That was not a good, and I said it in front of like 200 people. I had people like hate me, hate me so much. But I was like, but I just was going to beat them to the punch because I fundamentally believed that I would always be betrayed. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to betray them first. I wasn't proud of it. I didn't like it, but it was the truth. And again, if we can let the morality go and be like, that's just a human thing that people do when they get hurt. They then go and like sabotage and protect and all the things, right? Like there's nothing wrong with like our human behavior, and it largely doesn't work. And so if we put like integrity in, then we have like a life that works.
Yeah, it's like integrity over morality. A lot of the stories get written in that moral judgment space, and then we live our lives built on worry and fear and guilt.
Well, and so much of it comes from religion, which I think like the intention was probably correct, but I live in the Bible Belt, so I'm really sensitive to this. And I like totally denounced like any kind of religion, you know, from the time I was told that my Jewish friends were going to hell. That was in high school. And I was like, all set. That doesn't make any sense to me. And so fast forward, and I'm like, if we believe that God or the universe or angels or whatever it is that created all things was conspiring in our favor and was our cheerleading best friend, not the thing that says to follow these 10 commandments, or this is right and this is wrong and this is going to get you to heaven and this is going to get you to hell. If we let that go, the stern parent that we make God out to be, and instead have God be your best friend who is cheering you on and conspiring in your favor, everything in people's lives would change. And that's what journaling actually is. It's just journaling to your best friend. Like, what if you could do it? What if you weren't scared? What if I'm always here helping you? That's the conversation that I help people get to. And it's why I do it every day, because like I need that reminder that I'm not in this alone. And I think that that's where so many of us live, is that like we're in this alone, and that's pretty hopeless.
Yeah. Well, in a conversation with a journaling page, a conversation with God is ultimately a conversation with yourself, because we are all of the same essence. We're all of the same thing. So that conversation that you're having is at the deepest level by every every regard. So it's so powerful, the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing it. I ask every guest a question. Anna, where do you see the magic in the world?
Oh gosh, I have to say like birds. It's the weirdest answer, but I've noticed I've been like buying a lot of bird paintings, but I just think that they're so incredible, like how they just soar over things, and they've got these little wings and big wings, and like I find so frequently, like if I can just like remember to fly above the drama and the chaos and like get a little perspective. I think it's why I love like being in airplanes so much, right? Just like to shift that perspective. So I really like and finding magic in birds and just in nature in general. Like there was the blue moon last night, the blue moon, super moon. Like it's magical. I spent a week at the beach. It's like watching the ocean. It's like, this is so cool. I can't believe we get to see all of this. Like really like birds, but really nature, and just just this, even you and me right now, like it's all just magic.
Getting above the fray, that is magical. And I love that. I love this question because I've asked it to so many people, 70, probably more people than that. And I've never heard birds. And that's such a beautiful answer. It's such a beautiful answer.
Well, it's funny because I didn't know that I had a thing with birds, except you can see these flamingos right here. And I brought home some paintings the other day, and my husband was like, okay, so when did you turn into a bird lady? And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, could you look around our house right now? And I was like, oh my gosh, there are a lot of birds.
Yeah, there's a
So,
message there for you. Yeah.
there's a message. There's a message. So yeah.
Anna, where can people find you?
Yes. On my website, annakmorris.com. It's ANNAK and then morris.com. I have a 12-week group coaching program that launches the end of September. It's called the Reconnect, because I really believe that like as we reconnect with ourselves, as we reconnect with the divine, there's just freedom for all of us, right? We can be untethered.
Like birds.
Yeah. That we can just like learn to like that soaring that they do when it's just so relaxed and like so like effortless ease. I think that's all we really want. So yeah, my website, and then same thing on Instagram, Anna K. Morris, and Facebook as well.
Thank you so much. And yeah, you're always doing coaching videos and sharing your knowledge. Thank you so much for being out there doing what you do. Everyone, her links are in the show notes. Go check her out. Go check out her program and all of the books that we mentioned in this episode as well. Thanks so much for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you so much to Anna for coming on the podcast. I hope you took away some really important things for yourself. So a couple of the things that she said that I felt were incredibly powerful is this idea of taking the morality out of our decisions, taking the morality out of the things that we hear and see in the world around us. We really begin to write stories when we add in right and wrong and good and bad. And one of the things that I'm passionate about teaching my coaching clients and really to anybody who will listen is to take the right and wrong, good and bad out of our decisions. And ultimately, we're making thousands. There's research. I think they said we make like 30-some thousand decisions every single day. And if we took the morality out of those decisions and just neutralized all of the decisions that we make, when you start to write a story about what your husband might be thinking or how your mom might respond to whatever you do, like we begin to bring right and wrong and moral judgment into that. But when we can just simply say, you know what, for me, it feels really good for me to make this decision. It feels really good for me to say, no, I can't do that this week. Or yes, I would like to do that. And then holding to it without bringing all of this like funky this or that into it, it makes such a huge difference. And so her way of approaching this is to start putting your thoughts on paper, and then you can start to see exactly what those thoughts are and really listen to yourself. So I think it's really, really powerful. If you want to check Anna out, make sure that you go into the show notes and follow all of her links. She's such an amazing human. I hope you got a lot out of this episode. Thank you again once more so much for listening. I know you're a busy human who has lots of things that you could be doing. So listening to this podcast, it just really means the world to me that you would. You just keep shining your magical unicorn light out there for all to see. I'll see you next time.